Hello and welcome to another Satchel Pulse Wellbeing webinar. My name is Jon Tait. I'm your host for the webinar, and my role is I'm a Deputy CEO of a multi-academy trust. I've been in teaching for about 25 years. I'm an education author, blogger, writer, podcast host, and speaker. So hopefully I'll lend a lot of that experience to you within this kind of 15 minutes or so of this webinar. And really delve into some of the areas that you can work on as a school to improve the well-being of your staff. Now, Satchel Pulse have created a toolkit and a tracker with lots of different strands, really, and what they call pillars. And the pillar we're going to look at today is the relationship with colleagues. So if you are a leader at any level watching this, whether you are a team leader of support staff, whether you are a head of subject, head of year, head of phase, whether you are a middle or a senior leader, an executive leader, head teacher, trust leader, all of this is really, really relevant because we all lead teams. So it's all about how you can make sure that you are leading teams, you are looking after wellbeing, and you're looking after the kind of relationships that colleagues have with each other within your teams. So it's really, really important. And all of us want to work in happy organizations and high performing organizations, and kind of how we get there. It's not just about having, I don't want people to come across that, oh, well, we just need to have happy people and that'll be fine. That's one thing, and we've obviously got to make sure that they are high performing and have performance as well. But generally, we don't get high performance, and we don't get people who want to stay in our organizations and work really hard for us if they're deeply unhappy. So that kind of relationship with colleagues and how people, when they come to work and when they come to your school, do they feel valued? Do they feel like they're working with people that they respect, that they like, and they kind of get on with? Because actually, we spend a lot of time in our schools, probably more time than we spend in our living rooms and in our kitchens at home. So we've got to make sure that we are feeling it's something worthwhile and that we're enjoying it at the same time. So if I just share my screen, and if you have seen one of our webinars before, you'll be familiar with what I'm going to show you now, which is the Satchel Pulse Wellbeing Tracker. And they've got a series of across the middle of my screen here. There are the pillars that I talked about. And the one we're going to look at today, like I said, is the relationship with colleagues. I'm just going to dive into this one here. If I scroll down a little bit and click on all questions rather than just the low scoring ones. And what the Wellbeing Tracker gives you, if you've not seen one of these before, one of these webinars before, it gives you a series of questions that as a team leader, you can start to reflect on or ask your teams to reflect on. Because these are the type of questions that the staff themselves would be asked. So if you then put yourself in the shoes of the staff and actually start asking, what would our staff say here, and how do we know this, and what's the evidence behind it? So if I look at the first one here that's highlighted on the left hand side, it says, I see myself as a valuable member of my workplace. Okay. And what's interesting here is the average score. So this is some kind of dummy data. The average score actually, when this was filled in for a certain school, will be 10.0, which is kind of really, really good. But actually on the right-hand side, it gives you some questions to think about, some reflection questions. So do the staff members see their role as being important in the development of the school, or is it just a job? That's an interesting question to reflect on about, are people just coming because it's a job, or do they see that they are part of a bigger picture and part of something that's actually driving change and making a big difference to the lives of the young people in your community? Or are they just coming and picking their wage up and leaving at kind of 3 or 4 o'clock and not really thinking about that, about that bigger picture? If I just scroll down a little bit further and select 2 or 3 of these questions on the left-hand side, and again, if you've seen one of these webinars and you're familiar with this, you'll know how this kind of works. Interestingly here now, people at work treat people from diverse backgrounds fairly. So actually, is there a culture of valuing difference in your school? And is this culture modeled by leaders in the district or the school, or like the trust or the area? So actually, that's really interesting to think about. How much diversity have we got, and actually is it valued, and are people treated in the same way and respected for that as well? If I just go down a little bit further, this one I'd find interesting here. I feel I have positive working relationships with my colleagues. So actually, does the school support wellbeing activities that support positive working relationships? So not just does it support wellbeing for the individual, but does it support positive working relationships as well? So are we doing things to almost bring people together for wellbeing, to improve those relationships, rather than just doing things for individuals? And that's a really interesting thing to think about when you talk about your wellbeing strategy and what you're doing as a school. Are you doing things actually about working with colleagues, or is it just individuals? Does the staff members, really important, or do we just want people working in isolation? And if there's any issues of staff working together, are they addressed in a timely manner? And what's done to promote the development of positive relationships when things have gone wrong? Okay, so again, are there times where things have gone wrong? What have you done, and how have you been able to kind of gel that back together again? This is what I always find really interesting. I would recommend my school or my department as a place to work. Now, this might be quite a kind of uncomfortable and hard-hitting answer sometimes for some people, but actually, when you're speaking to people, what would they do? Would they actually recommend your place, your school as a place of work? And equally, when you have adverts for jobs at your school, are your schools sharing those kind of social media adverts with on their own social media timelines and saying, this is a great place to come and work, come and work with me, not out of fear and not out of you have to do this, but are they doing that? Are they actually saying to people, this is a great place to come and work? Interesting that you kind of think about that and think about what culture is out there. Or are people saying, well, you don't want to work here, it's awful because. So you need to actually almost become comfortable feeling uncomfortable with some of those answers, because if you get an answer that you feel is not very good, then you need to then pull that apart and think, well, what we're going to do about it. If this is a situation, why is this? Why are people saying this? What can we do to resolve this? And what can we do to support our staff better so that we have a far better understanding, or not an understanding, but I suppose a bridging and a real kind of meshing together of the staff who really enjoy working here. And then everyone is kind of great with different colleagues, rather than kind of saying, I hate the people I work with, you don't want to come and work here, it's not very nice, because that's not where anybody wants to work. Okay, let me dive into then a couple of strategies that I think will hopefully be something that you can use. You may have seen some of these strategies before, you may use some of these strategies. If you haven't seen them before, then brilliant, it gives you a new idea. If you have seen them before and you are using them, then actually what my question would be is, how well are you doing it? You might be doing some things, but it's that banana hammer principle. It's not what you do, it's the way that you do it. So how well are you doing it? Let's kind of judge that. And it might be that you've seen this before in a previous school and you go, why don't we do that anymore? Or we used to do that a few years ago. Let's bring it back. So whatever your situation, whatever your context, hopefully there's something here for you to learn and to reflect on. So the first one is cake break, something that happened in a school I used to work at every Friday that was brilliant, and I know still happens to this day. So what is it then? Well, everyone loves a cake and a catch-up, especially on a Friday. So, the idea is that if you've got a central staff room, then great. I know lots of schools don't anymore, but you might have different collective places where staff can come to. It might be in departments, it might be the main hall, there might be lots of different ways. So you might want to do this departmentally, or you might want to do it as a whole school. The idea is you put a small buffet on a Friday Friday break time. And people come together for 15, 20 minutes at break time. They grab a cake, it says cake, but ultimately, you'll see on my next slide, savory cake, whatever it is. They come and grab a cuppa, grab something to eat, and they have a natter. And the great thing about that is if you've got a central staff room or a central place that's going to happen, staff from different departments end up talking to each other, which I know sounds ridiculous because you think, well, that should always happen. But in lots and lots of busy schools, especially when departments are kind of in their own buildings or they have their own staff rooms, lots of them don't need to come out of their rooms or come out of their areas. So they become very kind of isolated in their department. So it's great for maths teachers to chat to English teachers and technology teachers to chat to PE teachers and likewise. So it's a great way of doing this. And it really helps just bring people together and have that collective communal kind of, we are bigger than just our own department. And there's people in here that I can chat to and I really like this. And, it's a fantastic kind of thing to do. So definitely one to think about. So what do you need then? Well, you just need a simple rota really, where each department takes it, or each phase team, or however you work it, takes it in turn to do that. So once you set a rota up, people should only have to do it once every kind of term probably, because you've probably got 10, 12 or 13 or 14 different teams, and they just do it, so they have to maybe do it 3 times a year, and you just work that rota around. Normally each team works out how much money they need to put in, something like a £5 potentially if it's a fairly big team, and one nominated person goes to the supermarket the night before with the money, or then gets the money back and buys a job lot of stuff, a few cakes, crisps, savory stuff, all that kind of stuff, cheese, biscuits, drinks, and it's all laid out in that kind of staff room area or wherever it is the lesson before. Hopefully someone's free and they can do that. It's all laid out. Everyone comes every Friday and it just works and it's great. Right, what to avoid then? The only thing to avoid that I would say is just make sure that the contributions are proportionate. So if you've got a massive English department with 13 people in, and they're only putting £2 each in, and you've got a small art department that suddenly they're having to put 20 quid each in, that's not good. So you might want to team up some of the small departments with other small departments so that there's a bit of equality there, so that actually all of the staff are kind of contributing the same, and it's not falling on small departments to suddenly try and put a huge spread on when it's not really fair. So just think about that and think about how you would work the rota. And lastly, for this strategy is how we would take it further. What's really nice is to schedule a senior leadership cake break in the last week of term, where the senior leadership team, come in and actually they put maybe even a bit of a nicer spread on, or something a little bit kind of, nice. And it might be that at that point, anyone who's on duty, they're allowed to not be on duty. They come in, the senior leadership team do their duty for them. And it's all because, the goodness of the kind of heart of the senior leadership team. So that's quite a nice way to do it. And just a nice way to finish the term. And equally, the last bullet point I've put there is that you might want to host it in a staff room, but equally you might want to host it in different departments so that staff can actually get into different departments and see their classrooms and see what's on their walls and look at the displays and just get it, because lots of staff, you'll be amazed, have never been in other departments. They've never ever walked into a maths classroom or the art department. Oh, wow, look at this. I haven't been in here before, or I haven't been there for ages. So getting people out around and about the building also builds those relationships with colleagues, and it's fantastic. So think about how you might want to do that. I know it's tricky because some of those areas might be teaching areas that are going to be used immediately after the break time, and you don't want food all over the place. But if you can make that work, that might be quite useful. Okay, my next strategy, my practical strategy, is what I call subject specials. Okay. And every kind of subject has will have something that they can do that's different from another subject. And it's about hosting a series of subject-related social events throughout the year, and really bringing staff together. So every half term, maybe getting a different department or a phase team or whatever teams you've got in your school to put on an activity for staff that's specific to their area, that staff can come along to. And I've given you some examples there of the obvious creative ones. So a Great British Staff Bake-Off, what a great way to, in your food tech rooms, if you're a secondary school, to have a bake-off and to have a competition where people are going to come, or even just forget the competition. They just want to come and, there's a recipe and we're going to give it a go. Or a Just Dance, and having something, like that, that's quite fun. Or a technology build-off where people are going to have to build something. A Great British Sewing Bee, a painting challenge, a staff quiz. The list is endless. I mean, I've given you some examples there, but there are so many different things that each kind of department can do. And certainly the creative ones should be at the front of the queue here. They can do some great things here, and then bringing staff together in that area to give it a go after school is a great way to, again, bring staff together and build relationships amongst your staff teams. So what do you need then? You ultimately just need subject leaders and heads of department or phase teams to think about something creative that they can do throughout the year. It might be linked to a certain point in the year. It might be linked to something that's on telly at the moment. So, the Great British Bake Off or those type of things where you think, oh, let's do it at this time of the year because it's quite topical. And just put a schedule together for staff so people can sign up to it, and then give regular reminders leading up to the events to then say, don't forget this is on next week, or have you signed up, and just corral some real interest and get people, who's going to come, and it's going to be great, and take some pictures and make it a really, really kind of great staff event. So lots of things you can do there. What to avoid then is avoid starting them too late. You want to have them to start as quick as you can after the school day, because you don't want it to be starting at 4:30 and going on at 5:30, because that's not well-being anymore. You want it to kind of start fairly early. So make sure that actually the logistics are planned. You can get a really prompt start. It starts at kind of 3:30, 3:45, on for about 45 minutes, finishes before 5 o'clock, done and dusted, and people can go home. And also have a cut-off time for when people can sign up, because if the department that are organising it need a certain amount of materials, whether that's ingredients, whether that's kind of materials for building something, or even just the amount of chairs or desks or paintbrushes they need, they don't want to be literally stood there thinking, how many people are going to come tonight? I have no idea whether there's one person or 21 people. You have a bit of respect for the department. They need to know how many people are coming. So having a sign-up form, like a Google form, a Microsoft form, or even just emailing in to somebody in school to say, I'm going to be coming, then at least you know the size of the event, and then people can plan accordingly. And lastly, how to take this even further is make it competitive. although we want each kind of thing to be fun, it's nice to have a bit of a mix of, a bit of competitiveness. So that Great British Bake Off, have a judging panel, have a winner, have a little trophy that somebody gets to say, I won the Great Staff Bake Off, or I won the spelling bee or the sewing bee. Just, and it's all for fun, but we like a bit of competition at the same time. And then lastly, why not make it a team challenge? Why not have departments actually entering a team in a quiz, and the English department are going to try and win against the maths department, or those type of things. So lots of different ways that you can do that, and you can introduce an element of competition. And all the time, it's building relationships with colleagues. It's building the fact that it's a great place to work. We're not just about exam results. We're about a lot of other things. And ultimately, we're a great staff team who work together, who come together and enjoy working together as well. So let me stop sharing my screen. Hopefully that's been useful, and you have got a couple of ideas there. And even if you are using some of those things, it's allowed you to reflect on how well you're doing them. And hopefully it's given you some of those reflection questions to think about. Actually, are staff happy at our school? And do they enjoy working with the people around them? Would they recommend this, this school to other people? And even if that's just giving you some reflection points to go back and think about in your school, then hopefully this will have been worthwhile. If you enjoyed it, I hope to see you soon in some of our other wellbeing webinars. And yeah, thank you very much, and see you all later.